Well, hello, book lovers out there. I have such a treat for you today. I'm so proud and honored to bring you Rachel Joyce, celebrated UK author, but known around the world for her award-winning novels, especially the heartwarming novel of The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you very much.
So we're here in particular today to talk about your newest book, Miss Benson's Beetle, which is going to be coming out in November in the States and in Canada by Dial Press. And then it's going to be coming out in July in the UK on Doubleday. So I didn't know if you wanted to introduce the book. This is such a treat for us to have the author introduce the book. So I would love to have you tell everybody a little bit about Miss Benson's Beetle.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to hold up the UK copy because there's only one at the moment. Because everything's it is beautiful, but the US cover is really, really beautiful, and I can say that because I didn't do it. It's really spectacularly lovely. It's so true to the book. But to introduce the novel, I would say a few years ago now, I began thinking that it was time to write, or I just really wanted to write as a woman for women. And even though I feel that I've written a lot of, female characters who kind of really make plots work, I haven't put women at the center of my books, unashamedly at the center. And I didn't know why I hadn't done that, because I am one. So, and I have daughters, and I just thought, well, I'm going to write a book about female friendship, but there are so many brilliant books about female friendship that I want to do something slightly different with it. So I'm going to do an adventure story for women, like a spectacular adventure story, which will explore female friendship in all its kind of deepest complexities, but will also do all the things that male adventure stories do. So I spent a lot of time watching all those kind of classic male adventure stories, but I read so much, like Robinson Crusoe onwards, basically, and I thought my two women are going to go through all the same stuff and more.
I love it.
So that's where I started, really, and I'm now really pleased that I did, because I didn't realize that we were all going to be locked in at home. I sent them to the other side of the world. I just kept throwing more and more obstacles at them. And the joy for me is seeing how these two women just kind of really find themselves with one another, So it's about the power of women. Unashamedly about the power of women.
That's amazing.
And I feel maybe men won't get it, but I don't care.
Because you have 3 daughters, right?
I have 3 daughters and 1 son, poor thing, who's kind of, I know it's great. I mean, he's great with women, and he respects women, and so he should. Yes, so I have a very female, and I've got 2 sisters, so I come from a very female place.
Well, it's kind of funny that you bring that up, because one of the things I really wanted to point out was that your book is being published by Dial Press here in the US. And what I think is so cool about that is Dial Press's editor, Whitney Frick. She said she loves authors who shape, magnify, and promote the voices of women and marginalized genders. Yeah. And Dial Press's theme is kind of books driven by the heart. So it's that you said that about women. I'm like, it's perfect, because that is essentially the Dial Press, mission and motto. So how do you feel about being on Dial Press's first full book list this year?
I feel really proud about it. I mean, not least because Susan Campbell, my editor, was such a kind of, I mean, she was such an amazing woman, and losing her last year was a real blow. I mean, I know it was for many, many writers. She was an extraordinary one. And that's one of the things that is so extraordinary about her, is that she had such a profound effect on so many writers. But I know that it was very close to her. And I'm really, really proud to have been part of it. I mean, she and I talked about this book the last time I saw her when she came over to London last March, and she was really, she said, I'm really excited about this book. I'm really excited that you're writing for women. I feel this is the right place for you. So I was really sad. I mean, just devastated that she didn't read it. I would have loved to have given it to her to read.
Well, and I think in the editorial letter that Cleo wrote, she said that Susan Campbell introduced you to her. Then after she was introduced you to her, she pulled out of her to be read pile The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry and read it and loved it. And she actually said a comment in there. She said that as is common in a publisher's world, her to be read pile was large because in the publishing world. So I'm curious, do you have a towering to be read pile as an author? And if you do, have you pulled out any of those books during this quarantine to read?
I do. I mean, like many writers, I have a very large pile. I mean, I have a pile of books I get sent, and then I have a pile of books because I just love books. I love reading, and I think as a writer, it's really important that you read extensively. So I'm always reading. So, but I'm over like a lot of keen readers. I'm over ambitious with my reading pile. So I buy more than I can possibly read. It is
You're
a bit
blessed
of
and wealthy in books.
I am. So, but it's been strange. I don't know how it's been for you, but in during this kind of time of lockdown, it has been strange, my reading. I found my mind is very scattered.
Yeah, very, very slow and yeah,
Yes, hard to focus. And also I have all four children back at home. I mean, I say children, they're young adults now. So we've got a whole kind of dynamic going on, and I'm trying to work. And, there's so much going on in the world. There's a lot to think about, so to actually find that space where you can really focus on fiction or non-fiction, I'm finding quite challenging. And books are normally my solace.
right. So that's where's your solace in this time? Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, and actually it's strange. I've become so aware of the land. I mean, I'm lucky that I live in the countryside, and I mean, it was kind of there when I was writing Harold Fry, but it feels like I've really, really returned to very basic kind of nature. It's where I'm finding my comfort at the moment.
Solace now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love the spoken word and I love the written word, but I think there's something in me that actually needs something kind of immediate as well. I need to see the sky. Or last night I woke in the middle of the night and I realized the moon was shining on me, just full moon.
Wow.
It was a full moon. And I just lay there and I mean, not wanting to sound too out there, but I kind of really felt the power of the moon. I mean, and I don't remember that happening to me in a long time.
And that's probably like one of the moments you'll remember from this quarantine when it's over. That'll be one of your special moments.
Yes.
So do you follow any particular book lists or book clubs or certain authors then? I mean, obviously outside of the quarantine period, how do you find then new books to read? Obviously, we know right now you're not really digging in that to be read pile. So how do you find kind of your next new book to read?
I love bookshops. I'm really missing bookshops.
Yes, that is for sure.
I think that's the thing I'm missing most. I love going to a bookshop and just seeing, just going and thinking, oh, that looks interesting, and just leafing through it and then putting it down, and then, oh, that looks like, or then you're with a pile of 10. I miss that. That's how I find books. I mean, I find them also because people recommend things. I don't read reviews so much anymore, so I don't really know what's kind of, popular.
In book, yeah.
No, and I'm quite glad I don't know what's in. I mean, sometimes I go right back and kind of, I mean, the other day I was thinking, God, I mean, I love Thomas Hardy, and I thought I'm going to read more Thomas Hardy again. I'm going to go back there again, I mean, that we're so blessed in that there are so many places we can go with our books.
And I've read a couple articles lately where people have talked about, like you said, having trouble getting that motivation during quarantine to read and going back to classics and back to books that they read previously and old books for that comfort. And
I think a lot of people are rereading things that they've, so that they, it's almost as if in a time of such uncertainty, you need to go to something and reacquaint yourself with it. It feels, like you can dig a bit deeper with it. I mean, it's not that I haven't been reading. I've just read a new book by Donal Ryan, who I really like, the Irish writer, called Strange Flowers, which is coming out in August. Yeah, I mean, I love that, so I am reading, but I just say I'm reading slowly.
Right. What do you have a favorite?
Patchett. I mean, I've only just read The Dutch House.
Oh, I love The Dutch House too.
Oh my goodness.
I love The Dutch House too. That cover, that piece of art.
Oh, it's a brilliant. But then I hadn't read Bel Canto, so I read Bel Canto right at the beginning, and that was at the beginning of quarantine. And that's such a brilliant book to read in lockdown. I mean, it's the perfect lockdown book.
And as you said, speaking of bookstores, and has Parnassus Books in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite local bookstore, or are there certain bookstores that you've been into in the States that you really have loved or liked? Because I'm like you, I love bookstores. I love when I go to a new city, I love to find a bookstore and go. It's like a sight or attraction to me, a local independent bookstore.
Completely. So yes, whenever, I mean, I haven't been to the States now for, oh gosh, a year, about a year and a half, but I would always find, I was in New York, now I can't remember the name of the bookshops, but there are some overwhelmingly huge bookstores, aren't there, in New York, where you get lost in, I can't even remember who I was trying to find, but I sort of got lost on a floor trying to find them. But I love independent bookstores, because I feel then you can get the flavor of the bookseller, and so I do a lot. I mean, I would do everything I could to support them over here, and I would feel the same if I were in the States.
Is there one close to where you live, or is there a local one close to where you live?
There are a few close to where I live, because I do live out in the middle of nowhere. So it's if I want to go to a bookshop, and I've got a couple of places, but it's a bit of a drive for all of them. But there are a number, I would say, within an hour, and there's one that is, you open the door and like it's just got polished wood. So it just, you just feel, you start humming the moment you open the door, and then all of the books are kind of the jacket is been rewrapped in plastic so that it has a kind of special coating around it. So everything about it feels incredibly special.
And they smell too.
Yes, and they'll make you a coffee, and they will just, they really want to talk to you about what you want to find. I think, that kind of exquisite search.
Yes, I agree too. Well, it kind of reminds me of, I love this quote that you put on your Facebook page recently. When you talked about going in the bookstore and looking for that next read, how you find your next read. You said on your Facebook page, you said, the cover is the door to the story. And when you saw the cover of your new book, you said, and what a spectacular door. And I love that quote, because I know the old adage is, don't judge a book by its cover, but that, like you said, so many of us, you see this huge span of bookshelves, and there's certain covers that pull and gravitate to you and give you kind of a sense of the book's aesthetic or what kind of effect it might have, and it can be a pretty integral part of the book. And so I love that quote that you said.
I have such respect for the designers of book, the book jacket. I think it's such an important job, because it's telling you as a reader what the language, what the feel is, what the language, what the kind of story is. It's, it might be suggesting another cover. I think Anne Patchett at the end of The Dutch House, in the Waterstones edition here, which is a kind of big bookseller here, has an essay about book jackets and how important they are, and how sometimes it can suggest another writer. So I think one of her early jackets suggested Anne Tyler, but without, and that's without anybody saying this is like Anne Tyler, or if you like Anne Tyler, you're
Right.
like this. It's just that I think they work on so many levels, and they are such a beautiful thing. I mean, the best. They are really beautiful things in themselves. So I mean, I think I am lucky because I have got a spectacular door, but I do think they are the door.
So, well, let's talk for a minute about that gorgeous US cover. I know you don't have it in front of you, but people can go down to my page and look at that cover on their view. It is gorgeous. Kudos to Carolyn Cunningham, that book cover designer. It is gorgeous. So, how involved were you in the process of it, and what did you think? What were your thoughts and reactions when you saw that final draft of the US cover? Because it is spectacular.
I mean, I knew about her because she'd done the cover for my last book, The Music Shop, and I love that cover. I think it's a really, it really captures the book, but without, it's kind of not obvious, and yet it's so obvious. That's why I love it. It is absolutely the right cover. And so I felt if she could do it again, if she was interested in doing it with this new book, I really, really wanted to. So I said to Cleo early on, I would love her to be involved with you. And I follow her on Instagram, and everything she does, I think, you're amazing.
It's funny because after I read your book, it's like something I don't usually look at, but then after I read your book and saw the cover and saw her name, then I noticed one or two other books that I had read recently she had done the covers for. And like you said, I had never even knew of her before, and oh my gosh, her covers are spectacular.
They are. They really, really are. I really admire her.
Had she done
strange? I don't know her. I don't know anything about.
Oh yeah. Had she done any of your other covers or just the Music Shop?
No, she does just the Music Shop, and I feel she turned the covers round for me at the US covers, I think, because I think it's so individual, and yet it's kind of, I mean, that they are just, I couldn't have seen them coming. I think that's what's so exciting as a writer, is when somebody gives you something and you think, I had no idea of that.
Yeah.
No, that was in the world, and that is absolutely it. Whereas sometimes you see them and you think, oh yes, I sort of had that in mind. Yes, and it's not that it's a disappointment. You're delighted it has a cover, but she is doing something different. So when I saw what she'd done for Miss Benson's Beetle, I don't know, I was moved at the detail of it, and how, I mean, the kind of colors capture the whole, as I was saying, the kind of celebration of women and the adventure, and it's a dynamic, bold cover, and yet the detail is very, very true to the novel too. So I'm really proud of it. I feel very lucky.
Well, and what is always so interesting to me is how all the countries have different covers, like how each country has a different cover to the book, and the UK and the US and the Canada version are very different. So what do you think, with the various audiences in each country, what do you think those three different publishers think, how did they use the different audiences to decide the cover? Because they're all so different. How do they cater to, this is the UK market, this is the US market, this is the Canada market, because they are completely different. I think the Canada one, I think, is perhaps the most different out of the three, but they all are different. So how do you think they kind of steer those covers for those different countries?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think and because I'm truly part of the journey with the UK one. With the others, I'm not so party to the kind of emails, the build up to it.
Process.
So I mean, I know with the UK one there was another cover, and I felt that it wasn't true to the book at all, and it's very unlike me to kind of go to be be confrontational because I dislike, I find it so tricky. But
Yeah.
I mean, I did feel, no, this is, and actually I think because these two women for me are so strong, and they've been such, for me now they are very real. They've been with me, they've been in the back of my car, they've been everywhere with me, and I believe in them. So it felt that I was betraying them by not having a cover that was, more vibrant, really. And
That was worthy of them.
yes, yes.
Is this
So
for
I
the UK?
right
For
the
the UK?
UK, yes. And the cover that we have feels absolutely, it's got these kind of golden beetles that kind of, dazzling. Um, and it captures a moment in the book really, really beautifully. But I felt it did have to match these two women, and they are, I think of all the characters I've written, they are the most dynamic.
So speaking of women, like as you were bringing up, Dial Press, obviously we talked about kind of the importance they place on female authors. It seems that there are more imprints lately like Dial Press, and then more book clubs like, say, Reese Witherspoon's book club, that are kind of putting forth more women focused work in the publishing field and in the book world. Have you noticed that shift in the last couple years, or?
I mean, I have noticed it a bit, and I'm really glad to see it happening. The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry came out in 2012, and I've traveled the world especially with Harold Fry now, and spoken at a lot of book events and met a lot of readers, and on the whole, it's women that I'm meeting.
Yes.
And yet I did feel that men were being given a disproportionate amount of attention, really, in that, even if I went to a book event and there was one man, I remember at one particular event, there was one man at the table and, say 10 women, and the man was the one who felt he had the right to kind of ask the questions and talk to me, and the women all gave him, it was like everybody gave him the kind of center place. And in writing this book, I did feel, and it's partly, I suppose, politically what's happened, but partly where I am in my life, and with my daughters beginning to leave home, that I'm just thinking, why aren't I writing about about women? Why am I not? I mean, I do celebrate women, but why am I not unashamedly
Right, the forefront, like you said?
Absolutely the center. And it's true that the men in Miss Benson's Beetle don't come out of it terribly well, and I feel bad about that at all.
I think I said that in my review about how
Yes.
Mr. Mundick, no matter how he tried, he took a life, saved a life, yet he still couldn't stop these women and was overshadowed completely by them. And, he could not stop them from reaching their vocations. They were formidable.
They are formidable. And the word vocation is very important to me, because I think as a woman, it can get lost, our sense of vocation, and so I used the word in the book very carefully, but I mean it, that I think we need to pursue it, we need to follow it.
And so the other thing we were talking about with Dial Press, about the Whitney, the editorial director there,
Yes.
she also said she really likes authors whose storytelling has a mission, and who, kind of communicate about the way we live and the way we could live better, and feel like that it is very important that the authors get their story out. She loves authors that feel like they have something to share that is important. What do you feel, in this story of Miss Benson's Beetle, that was so important to share? It kind of seems like that's where you were kind of going with that, as far as the women.
Yes. It is. I think it was partly that these two women have the courage to honor the thing that is true to them, and they don't do it in a conventional way, and they're unafraid of that, or with, together they find that. And not to give anything away, but I think the very last chapter is particularly important to me because it's the message of the book really in the last few pages. And I didn't really know when I began writing it that that was going to be the ending. And yet, then there was one day it suddenly landed, and I thought, yes, this is really, really why this book is important to me, because even though it's about two women in 1950, it jumps, as you know, and it's a message for me, it's a message for my daughters, it's a message for the women I love, it's a message for the women I don't know.
It's like you're present to the world there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like, I mean, my agent read it and she said it's your call to arms book. And I thought, yeah, in my way,
I
it
love
is.
that. I love that completely. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was why, and I know you kind of touched on it earlier, how you put them to the far-flung reaches of the world. Why New Caledonia? Because I read somewhere that you haven't been there yet. So why New Caledonia as the location of the book, and why the golden beetle as the elusive species that these two women are chasing after on this, like you said, spectacular adventure? I kind of speculated in my review, but I would love to know from you the real reason, the reason why you chose that place, that beetle.
Okay, so I chose, first of all, it started with the beetle because, I mean, this is years and years and years ago. I heard a talk on the radio about cryptozoology, I've never heard of it before, which is the kind of science, a kind of, study, the looking for animals whose existence hasn't yet been proved. And the poor man who believed in cryptozoology was being given a real roasting by the interviewer. And of course, I thought, what is this? So I went home and found out about it. And animals like the Loch Ness Monster would be at the far, far end of the spectrum. But I suddenly thought, yes, how do you find an animal? I mean, the world is full of animals that haven't yet been found, but people have a sense might be out there. So how do you go and find them? And I thought, well, it's science, but it's also the imagination. You've got to go with what you don't know in order to kind of find it. It's a huge leap of faith. And so I was immediately interested because that's somewhere I am, I'm very interested in that kind of place. So I then began thinking about a story about a search for an animal that hadn't yet been found. And, true to form, I then thought it's got to be something tiny. So that was where I got to a beetle. I knew nothing about beetles. So I thought, well, this is going to be interesting because already I'm going to be finding out about beetles. And I think with a novel, you've got to choose something where you're going to go on a journey for yourself as well, and you realize you're up for the adventure, and you're going to, it's a lot of research, and you think, yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go, and by the end, I'm going to know as much about beetles as my women do. That's what I have to do. So, so that was how I kind of got the idea of searching for a beetle. And then I thought, then I just thought, well, a golden beetle, who wouldn't want to go and look for that? What? I mean, who wouldn't? So that was, and then I began originally thinking, I don't want to set it in the UK. I feel I kind of need to break free of the UK. So I'd originally thought it would be in France. And then even though it was 1950, I thought, but so many people have written about France and it's been done really well. And actually, if I start writing about France, the moment I mention the patisserie it's like we know it. It's kind of like we've got all these pictures that we'll bring to it. So I thought, no, I've got to push myself and the reader to somewhere we don't know. So then I just thought, well, other side of the world, obviously. And then New Caledonia just came up. It just came up. And I've never been there. I've done masses of research about it. At one point, I thought I have to go. And then I thought, actually, I don't have to go. I have to find out everything I can, and then I have to use my imagination. And I think not knowing the place actually makes you work even harder in some ways, because you can't rest on anything. You've
It's
got
kind
to
of like when
really
you watch a movie, then you already have in your head a picture of the character if it's, if you haven't read the
yes,
book yet, and
yeah,
so that would kind of have hemmed you into, you would know the reality of the place, and like you said, not be able to imagine it as mystical and
exactly. And the other thing was that I did kind of really look for novels set in New Caledonia, and there are a few self-published ones, but there aren't many. And so I did think, because I was trying to write a true adventure story, so I wanted the experience to be as much of an adventure for the reader as for my women. So to send everybody off to an island that a lot of people haven't been to felt true to the spirit of the book.
you
So
did that because I'd never heard of it either until I read the book,
I
and
know
I looked it up
about
too.
it. No, I mean, I'd love to go. I'd really love to go. But I recognized that in the time I had, and it was a few years, and obviously now it's certainly not going to happen, but um, it felt important to place it somewhere unknown.
Yeah, because when I looked it up, it even said that U.S. troops were there during the war, and I was just like, "Why have I never heard of this place?" And so I
And
just,
yeah, I mean, I did so much research, but one of the little pamphlets I ended up with was a little pamphlet sent out to the US troops as a welcome to New Caledonia. And it
oh,
tells them kind of about the island. And in the book, there is an introduction to New Caledonia written by he's not real, she has this guidebook with her, but I based it on that little US
I
guide.
wondered about that because I did look up that to see if that book was real, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I was like, "Oh,
Yes, no,
it's just."
it isn't real, but I did base a lot of this pretend book on that little pamphlet. It was hilarious, but it was kind of,
So
it was, yeah.
why did you pick 1950? That was the other
I
question.
picked it because I really wanted it to be, I mean, the UK was still in a period of rationing then, and I did want it to be at a time when it wasn't just immediately post-war, but it was that period where, because there was post-war when everybody thought, right, the work where that everything is over and now everything can go back to being brilliant, and obviously it didn't. There was more poverty, there was more suffering, there was more rationing, and there was the kind of feeling was very people were very, very worn down by then, but ready for change, I think, which did begin to come with the Festival of Great Britain, which happened in 51. People were ready for it. So 1950 felt the right year to set it.
Yeah, my dad is from Banff, Scotland, and his family went to, at the time it was Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it didn't just go back to normal after all of that. Yeah, there
How
was.
could it was broken, it was how could it possibly have gone back? But I also was, I mean, I was lucky because because I do research so thoroughly, and then I have to reject, most of what I've researched. But for me, in order to write it, I have to know that I'm on solid ground somehow. Uh, and in writing, there was the whole passage, and it's actually now quite small, but where they travel to Brisbane by boat in order then to go to make the last kind of leg of the journey to New Caledonia. And I read a lot about, and I was doing a lot of research on it. I found a lot, pictures, but I couldn't quite get what it would be like to be on a boat. And then I don't know if I've got it here. Oh no, I've put it somewhere else. It's up in the main house. We were clearing out my husband's father's house. And I mean, this was as I was writing the section. This is the magic of fiction. I was writing these chapters, for months. And we found a letter from my husband's great uncle describing the journey from Tilbury to Brisbane by boat in I
That
think it was 1954. But it was it just it was just there in my.
And you're like, serendipitous. Like, how can I not?
I know. Just
Wow.
so you're always looking for a little sign, from above that, like a tick, like
Yeah.
yes, you're doing the right thing.
Right. Like
And
you're on the right path. You're in the
yes,
right
and
direction.
on the whole, you spend, every day you don't get it, but just that day when I found that letter was a lovely moment, and it was great. Great Uncle Mont, he was called, and yes, I really used his letter.
Yeah, because it was like you said, people would be spending days and weeks on boats. It's not like now you go to the airport, you jump on a plane, you're there within hours. Same thing. I remember we went through some ancestry.com documents and found ship manifests of, like you said, my grandma going down to Zimbabwe and whatnot. And you don't know that this time period anymore. It's
No,
an you said until you found that letter, you don't know that detail because we've never had to do it.
we just never had to do it, and I think we don't have that experience of journeying in
Yeah.
that amount of time, and
The
that's
whole the
really
trip is the journey versus the destination. You're right. I never thought about it that way. So going back to the cryptozoology you brought up, do you have any particular fascination with any, they call them, like you said, cryptids, these
yes.
incredible creatures that they're trying to prove exist, like say Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster. Do you have any particular fascination with any of them, or do you believe in any of them, or?
No, I mean, I find it interesting because I think a lot of them are based on myth or story, or and those I find interesting because I find myths really interesting, and why they're there. Um, but there weren't really. I mean, I had an extraordinary book of pictures of these creatures, and they did all look so unlikely. And there were a couple of photographs, and you just thought, that's
Why?
really an animal. That's not really an animal, is it? Um, but I love the idea, and I love that kind of faith in, beyond what's available, that there are other things.
There's still places to conquer, people to meet,
Yes,
species
yes.
to discover, and
And I mean, the more research I did into beetles and the more experts I met in that world, what really fascinated me is that they realized that, there is so much that we haven't yet found, and we need to find it before we lose it, so that we understand what we're losing and why we're losing it. So I really respect that search for what we don't yet know.
so are you starting to get a lot of presents as beetles? Are people starting to send you all different varieties of
Do you know? No,
pouches and pins and
I
all kinds?
wish they would. I don't think anybody's quite twigged yet. No, I wish they would, but nobody has sent me anything. No, I actually, no, that's not true. I have here. I don't know if you can see
Oh,
this.
that's
This,
gorgeous.
one of my very good friends, when she knew I was writing the book, gave me this. It's a pin.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And so
So
you had
she,
told her you're writing the golden beetle and she just found that in a shop
yeah, she,
somewhere.
she did in a secondhand shop.
And that's been like your on your desk as inspiration.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
perfect gift. What a friend.
yes.
So
That's with my friends.
yeah, the other thing I was going to ask you about was your the way you write about your characters. Your descriptions are so vivid and lush. Like you can really picture these characters. And as I said in my review, when I was reading the book, I could really picture Effie Trinket. I mean, I could picture Enid Pretty as Effie Trinket in the Hunger Games. I don't know if you've seen the Hunger Game movies.
I have seen a bit. I haven't seen much, but
Like
yeah.
just the way you wrote her, and like I said, I know the movies, but I'm not particularly attached to them. But the minute I was reading all these descriptions you gave, I could just picture her in my head. And then also the style of the book, I could picture if it was a movie, something that Wes Anderson directed, or in the style of the movie Hugo. So I just
Wow.
was curious as to what your process is to come up with these such specific descriptions of these characters. And do you ever think of any famous people as what maybe your characters would look like? You know, how do you come up with these? Because you're very, very descriptive. I even looked up at one point, like, what do lacrosse boots look like, because that was such a big thing with Marjorie, and I know shoes were so important in the Harold Fry book, his
Yes.
yachting shoes. So I just am curious how you, these little details that make it the whole difference.
I do think a lot about that kind of thing. I mean, I do really, it's like I can't let go of a book until I absolutely believe or know that these women in this instance feel so real to me that if you gave me any situation, I would know what they were doing and what they would say. And I don't know. I mean, I think it just must be my take on the world. Because a friend of mine the other day said, "Oh, you're just, you're so quirky." And I thought, "What do you mean quirky? I'm just, that's not quite, it feels really true to me."
Yeah.
So I think I'm very true to the way that I perceive people, I think. Um, and I mean, in my way, I try to dig as deep as I can. And I always feel, oh, I should have dug. Should I have dug deeper? All that stuff that those things, those rods that you kind of hold over yourself. And of course, I read other novels and think, oh, that's brilliant writing. I'll never write like that. I'll never be that good. But in terms of my own characters, yes, I don't let go until I feel they're walking freely of me.
So do you, like you said, you're so aware of people. Do you sometimes see people like with quirky little outfits or actions or things and think, oh, I'm gonna save that nugget for a character in an upcoming book? Are you kind of cognizant of people around you and kind of pull these nuggets for these little details that you put in these characters?
I think I did more to begin with use what I was seeing around me. With Harold Fry, certainly, I was very definitely using characters, people that I'd spotted, and kind of then, obviously you pull away from what you've seen and you. But I think with Marjorie and Enid, they were so much the people they are. I just had to really. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying they came to me in an inspirational way at all. I had to really, really work for them to feel real. But I ended up, I looked at a lot of pictures. And there was one day when I was looking, I thought, is she like Marilyn Monroe? Is that how she looks? You kind of, but it was never quite it. But you might find a little something. But we are all, when you really look at a person, you think there's no one else like you. You are absolutely the person you are.
Kind of like these beetles that have thousands of
Yes, yes,
variations.
yes, yes. And you might think we all look the same, and we do, and yet we're all different.
Exactly. Well, and another thing that I wanted to bring up was you actually were in theater and TV for over 20 plus years before you transitioned to writing books. So I was curious if that background, if it helped or complicated kind of your writing process now, and how is writing books different from writing plays and adaptations?
Well, just to begin with, I did always write. I mean, even when I was a child, I think, you often know where you're comfortable and where you find things out. And I've definitely found things out not through talking, but through writing and through watching and then writing and trying to, shape things into a story. That was very definitely my comfortable place. But I do think acting and writing are are kind of similar muscles, really, in that you're storytelling, but you're also taking what you know and then you're making an imaginative leap in what you don't know. And I wasn't confident as a 20-year-old to show anybody what I wrote. And I wasn't that confident really as a 20-year-old, but I think a lot of the mistakes that people make about actors is that they think that they're really confident people. And I think a lot of actors are quite introverted people who actually feel quite comfortable on a stage. They sort of feel they can find their voice in that place Whereas just at a party, I probably wouldn't say a word. I've spent so many parties not saying a word, you know, and then you go home and you berate yourself for not saying a word. But I could find my place when I was on stage, I think because I was given it, and I could, you know, I could live up to it. And I love the process of rehearsing. And I do think the process of rehearsing is very similar to finding your way with a book, in that, you know, you have to be prepared to, even if you have a structure, which I'm quite bad at, but you have to be prepared to make mistakes and to recognize what's a mistake and to kind of put it away and then to try again. You know, to really kind of think what your scenes are about, you know, to think about it from the outside as well as the inside. And I just think the process of being an actor, performing in plays, means that you are aware of storytelling and the wonder of storytelling and the enchantment of storytelling. And I think all those things have been really, really valuable as a writer for me.
Well, and in the book, you had Marjorie at 46 years old deciding to set out on this, you know, magnificent adventure. And so when I
Yeah.
read that, I kind of thought, did that reflect kind of when you took that career shift or career change?
It was quite, I mean, I was right. I was acting for a very long time, and then my children were little, and actually acting with small children is quite a wonderful thing because that, you know, you don't sort of belong anywhere. So it's great with small children. You can have them with you, and then suddenly there's school, and then, you know, you can't just be taking them off to a different place every couple of months. And um, it kind of wore itself out for me. I didn't really want to be doing it anymore. Yes, I felt very differently about the whole thing, and there was a lot about it that I didn't like. But I did feel more confident about my writing, and so that was when I began writing plays for radio. And actually, writing plays for radio is very different from writing books in that nobody notices who the writer is. They notice who the actors are, but really nobody. You know, you don't. So I could just quietly do it, and I did for years and years and years. Just, and I think I really learned my craft. I mean, I'm still learning my craft, but I really put in the work. Because radio, writing a play for radio, you have to tell a story, and you have to enchant, that word again, your listener, because it's so easy to turn it off.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, that because you had to be so descriptive because you don't have the visual, you're just listening. That's probably another reason why you're so good at writing these characters, because you, like you said, you had to create them alive on the radio.
You do. You've only got the spoken word and sound, and it's a real. I think it is. It's so restricted that actually it's quite liberating because.
And it kind of throws back to when people didn't have the TVs and sat around on the radio and listened to the plays and the shows and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I know some people that are watching might not have read The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry yet, so they might not know that it originally started as a play. So I don't know if you want to touch on that at all.
Did it start? So The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry started as a 45-minute radio play for 3 people. And originally, I think the idea came around the time, it was actually around the time that my father, who'd been very ill with cancer, discovered that he hadn't very long to live. And I think in my way, I decided to write a play for him. I sort of wanted to write, I didn't really know it consciously, but I think where stories come from is always interesting to me. And I can see now that as I was losing my dad, I decided to write a story about a man who walks out to save somebody who's dying from cancer. And it's it's completely unlikely. It's a spur of the moment decision, but it takes him on a journey that is both the length of Britain or England in this case, and also into himself and his past and all the things he hasn't dealt with, and this incredible burden of sorrow and guilt that he carries. So I wrote it originally as a radio play, and there were just 3 characters in it. It was very, very simple, but the actor who played Harold, in fact, everybody who was in the play I think there's sometimes you get just a little magic happens and you think, oh, there's something in this story. And so when I came to writing a novel, and writing a novel was the thing I had wanted to do for 20 years. And I had done, but I just never shown anybody.
Right.
But when it came to the time where I kind of thought, right, I am going to commit to this now, a bit like Marjorie and Enid saying, this is my vocation. This is the thing that is true to me and in me. And why am I finding a million reasons that I can't do it? So I felt this was the story to go back to because there was so much in it and because it was so personal to me. And actually, what was really lucky was that I realized I was writing about a man who was walking the length of England and not knowing that he could make it, while I was writing a novel and not knowing that whether I could get to the end. And even if I did get to the end, whether anybody would be interested in it. So I immediately the protagonist and I had a kind of, we had a link that made him not just a character in a book. He was as real to me as, I don't know, I was to him, I could say.
Well, and even though you've written multiple books since then, that book has still at such a forefront. I saw that it was picked as a big read even just within the last year for several universities. It's, so it's still so prevalent.
It does have I think actually during lockdown here, it's become a bestseller again. I think it captured something, and it wasn't that I didn't set out to write a book that would really sell, but I set out to write a book that I believed in.
And it does connected because it's still, like you said, it's becoming a bestseller again.
Yes.
A book you didn't even know is going to make it. And
no, I always felt
it's anything.
I know, I just always thought of it as a little boat on a great big sea, but it just didn't give up. It just kept going.
And then you did a sister book or a sequel with the
Yes, I did. And then I wrote, so the woman that he's walking to, Queenie, who's in a hospice right in the northern part of England, she had a tiny chapter in the book right at the end from her point of view. And I always thought when I wrote the book, that was it. I wouldn't do anything else. And then after doing a lot of book events, people often asked me about Queenie, and they asked me about my dad. And after a while, I thought, I don't know why I'm telling this story over and over of my dad with cancer, because my dad wasn't just that man. My dad was my dad, and he was a drummer, and he was, he was an architect, and he was so many different things. And I thought Queen is the same. And in fact, that was an instance of putting a woman right at a very quiet woman at the center of the book. And it was I sort of felt I could justify the book so long as I didn't rewrite anything from Harold Fry. So if I was repeating anything that anybody knew, it had to go. But I thought so long as I was kind of turning the camera round and showing you something you hadn't seen before, it was valid.
And so how long do you, after you finish a book then, how long do you wait? I mean, do you give yourself kind of a break or a vacation before you start one? Or are you kind of ideas coming around in your head while you're still working on the other one? Or where are you at right now with things as far as, because right now all these books are about to come
Yes,
out.
I know. I mean, when I'm writing, sometimes an idea comes up and you just have to bat it away. You think, no, this is not the time. I am not listening. I'm not available. So go somewhere else. But I might write it down. And the worst part is that when you go through the stage of not being confident about what you're writing, and everybody, I'm sure any writer will admit they go through a stage where they think, this is the worst possible idea and I can never get to the end of this. And why did I think this was a good idea? In such moments, other books come to tempt you, kind of write me instead, write me. But you have to go, no, this is the path I'm on. But almost as soon as I finished this one, it was like being sometimes I thought I'm a bit like a sort of empty house, and I'm being circled by these stories and these people who are wanting their stories to be written. So I felt I was just listening, and I had about, I don't know, at one point I had about 3 or 4 ideas, and I thought, I don't know which one's going to win.
Oh,
I don't
exciting.
know where I'm going. And I'm still a little, I mean, I'm going down a certain path at the moment with a new book, but I don't really know whether it will, whether it will stick, or whether me
That's
and the
exciting.
idea will decide to part company and the idea will decide to find another writer instead.
What about you talked about all those ones that you wrote in the past in your 20s that you kind of always had written but weren't confident in and shelved,
Yeah.
are any of those ideas going to turn into a future book?
I,
Or
I looked at one the other day because there was one I really loved. I mean, I didn't really love, but I loved writing it and I was a woman, I was in my 20s, and I looked at it and I thought, no, this is a young woman's book. It's not my book anymore.
yeah,
Uh,
you're not at that stage anymore. Yeah.
no, I'm not. And actually, that subject I can't do justice to it anymore because I haven't got that energy. I've got a different energy now, but I haven't got that energy. So I am going to have to let that one go.
So you'll just those will always just kind of be yours on the shelf and not to see
Yeah.
the light.
Yes. Maybe they'll pop maybe a character, or because I know the characters. Maybe they'll drift in some shape
Yeah,
or
that
maybe they'll age a little bit. And I don't.
Has anybody in your family read them, like your children or your husband? Or that's interesting. So one more quick question on Miss Benson's Beetle. um, they talked in Miss Benson's Beetle about things that they missed when they are away from the UK. And so obviously we know you live in the UK, and one of the things they talked about in the book was the Branston pickle.
Oh
So
yes.
that was mentioned several times. So I was
Yeah.
just curious, is that some of the things that you miss? I know, like you said, you haven't been in the States in like a year and a half, but is that some example of some of the things you miss when you are out on a book tour? Or what kind of things do you get homesick for from the UK when you're traveling? And
Well, I mean, it's strange because when I was writing the book, I was really thinking about, what does the UK mean to me and what would I miss? And I mean, like Marjorie, I began to feel that actually, especially now in the world, I could almost be somewhere else and I could probably make my home. So long as I had the person I love with me, I might be ready to make my home. My sense of belonging has shifted, is what I'm saying. So Branston Pickle wouldn't be something for me that I would say I get desperately homesick for. Um, but when I was doing book tours originally, um, I did used to get really, really homesick. But I think that was to do with not being certain in myself of what was happening to me and where I was. And I think when you have a sense, when you have a kind of rootedness in yourself, you can begin to be anywhere, I would think, and not have such a profound sense of missing things. But I was then, it was my family. I mean, I just really, really missed my children, and I didn't know why I wasn't with them. And my bed, I didn't know why I wasn't in it. I just,
did
you
they
know,
join? Did they
secure.
join you on some of your tours?
Did
Did
I
you
what?
bring did you bring some of the kids on your tours, on some of your
Yes,
tours?
I did. I mean, I had one brilliant one. One of the most amazing ones I did was to Miami, to the Miami Festival,
Oh wow.
Literary
Yes.
Festival, and I said to my son, who was about 13 at the time, and he wasn't terribly happy at school. I just said, "Do you want to come? Do you want to come with me?" And he still talks about that as the most magical weekend we had. I mean, we flew out together and we arrived and we were so jet lagged. I mean, I don't think I ever recovered in that, the entire time we were there. But he just remembers, the kind of breakfast bar.
Yeah.
like, like
It's like the things that you don't realize you're making these memories that are going to be forever. Yeah. And it was
yeah,
just you two.
it was just the two of us, and we've
Now it's
never
probably
ever had that you know, it's before or since. It was incredibly special, and I wouldn't have had it without that festival. I really loved it. I can't now. I feel ashamed that I can't remember the name of the man who was organizing it, but he was an amazing bookshop, and it was a great thing to do. It was a real honor.
I'm surprised they haven't asked you to bring them back to Florida to go to Disney World or something like that. Disneyland or Disney World.
Yes. Yeah, they were always, yeah, they were trying, and then they just, I think they gave up with me. I think they realized that wasn't going to happen.
Well, the time has flown. I just looked up. It's been an hour. So I told you it'd be less than an hour. I'm so sorry.
Not we haven't even drunk our wine. We've been so busy.
I know. I was just going to say cheers to you. I've had just the best hour. Cheers, or slunt, as they say.
Yes.
And I wanted to just thank you so much for this, and we so appreciate it. We can't wait until your publication dates coming up in the UK and the US, and for giving us kind of this whole insight and background into your new book, these characters, your processes as an author, just even more about you. I didn't know if you had any closing thoughts. I know that was kind of my end of my questions, but anything else you would like to talk about or say? Or
I'm always really bad at thinking of extra things. I'm always just so delighted to be asked questions, because I think I don't know what I would say. It's like everything I think, really, I write down, you know, and I really, really work at it on the page. I think I'm much better on the page than I am in real life. So I can never think of anything. But I feel really lucky that people read what I've written. And I feel really lucky that I have, the readers in the US that I have. Really, really lucky. And I love it when people reach out to me.
Well, and do you want to talk about your kind of writing space that you're in right now?
It's got a little bit dark here.
Writing space, you have to talk about that.
I'm not actually, because I'm in it now, because it's, I've gone very bright now. It's not too bright. I've actually realized it's gone dark here outside. Well, that is way too bright.
So a lot of people love to know kind of where people write and their desk and their ambiance, and you have to tell everybody.
Yes, I have this. It's called a shepherd's hut over here. So it's like a little wooden caravan, and it's in the middle of a field. And I do actually have sheep. I have 6 sheep, so they sit underneath it during the evening and sometimes during the day. But it's like, you know, as a child, you have if you're lucky, you have your own bedroom, and it's just your space. And this is completely my space, and it just has my things in it. And especially at the moment when we're a family of 6 again, just to be able to come here and get lost in my own thoughts. And it has a certain smell, because I tend to light a candle when I come in here to work. So it's my secret place. It feels very, very true to me.
I get that. I'm a triplet, so I get needing your own your own space, your own bedroom.
Triplet.
So I get it. So, well, it was a pleasure. And like I said, everybody who's listening and watching, go to my Facebook page, the Erudite Bibliophile with Wanderlust, to check out my review that I wrote on Miss Benson's Beetle, and watch this interview with Rachel. And please feel free to comment and reach out to us, and we really appreciate everything. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Real quick.